Hello Commanders, with the next major event, Dual Randomness, just about to start, I'm here to give a very brief overview and rundown of the 3 ranking maps, as well as what you can expect, what you might need to do, and what units or echelons I would recommend you to use. Please note that I will not be going over any specific strategies or going into much detail and the like, though there is a document in the description where you can find much more detailed descriptions of enemies, strategies, compositions, and all that stuff. Also, I will be streaming my ranking runs on Twitch and maybe YouTube, but I will at least be recording and uploading my ranking attempts here for reference. And also note that the new equipment that just came out a little while ago is not necessary at all for this ranking. They are more so something that's nice to have and can give you some nice bonuses, such as with the sniper ammo instead of AP ammo for map 2, or flares to give you a nice accuracy bonus, though there is one specific strat which I will highlight later for map 2. So to give a brief breakdown, unlike past events, DR ranking is divided into 3 unique maps, and your total ranking score, or your event score, which will show up on the leaderboard, will be a combination of your score on each map. So map 1 plus map 2 plus map 3 will be your ranking score. Map 1 is a nighttime puzzle map that has 3 layers, Map 2 is a much smaller supply line defense map, and Map 3 is a 2-layer daytime kill map, pretty much. Map 1 and 3 are similar in that they are very cookie cutter, and strategies can pretty much just be copied one-to-one with very minimal difference. So it is recommended that you just find a strategy or a video or some other reference that matches with what you have in your armory and just copy it one-to-one and you'll get a very similar score. So map 2, on the other hand, is where the big differences in score will be, as there is a lot of variability in enemies that spawn and enemy RNG movement. So that will be where most of your time will be focused in trying to get a good run there. Alright, so map 1 is a 6-turn puzzle map, which means that you will be hardly doing any fights, as most of your focus will be on moving your echelons around, unlocking hidden areas, capturing nodes, and completing various objectives on the map. So there are no restrictions to echelon usage, so you are allowed 14 echelons, in addition to hawks on top of that, though most of which will be used as just dummies to give yourself more action points. And the big thing here, though, is that SF units are allowed. So you can use as many SF teams as you want, though they don't play a big difference except for one exception, which I will get to in a little bit. The main objective here is to destroy the rubble, or the main objectives, I should say, is to destroy the various rubble around the map, which gives you quite a bit of points, as well as capture nodes, and capturing crates as well. So on layer 2, there is a section, which I will highlight, in which crates will spawn, and those crates specifically you want to eat or resupply on in order to gain the points, whereas the crates here on layer 3, you do not want to eat them. You simply want to capture the node that they are on and make sure they are blue, as those will give you points once the map ends. Now the main differences in score, since the bugs on the old servers were fixed, will come in crate RNG on layer 2. So sometimes you'll get crates there, sometimes you won't, depending on the turn. And the amount of parachute fairies you can use, as more parachute fairies means you can move the bombs that spawn in this section around the map easier in order to destroy more rubble, while you can also capture more nodes. So on the Japanese server, the strategy now, in order to max out score, is to use 8 parachute fairies. But don't worry if you don't have that many, as you can get similar scores, although lower, with much less parachute fairies. Now, moving on to teams, there are 4 combat teams, or approximately 4 combat teams that you will be using, depending on your strategy. But the first and by far most important team for this map is your SF Scarecrow team. Now, Scarecrow is a free ringleader that you get for unlocking the capture system. And to go with Scarecrow, this is the most recommended team that I would suggest, is 2 maxed out Manticores and a maxed out Nemium. in this position. So this means that all the fights that this team takes are just AFK and very easy. And the reason that Scarecrow is very important is because she can equip chips. So such as having, the two that you want are the Night Vision, which gives you an extra node of vision since it is a night map, and Phantom Stance, which allows you basically a free action point for this team. And specifically her second skill, Shadow Predation, in which she spawns essentially a dummy of herself that lasts for 1 turn, is very important, as you can swap with it to save AP, and that dummy can also capture nodes, which is very important as well. Now, for the units, you want everything to be level 90, 5-star max enhanced. That obviously, as most of the stats come from that. However, in terms of dummy linking, now Manticores don't gain a whole lot aside from stats from dummy linking, so it is okay to have, I would recommend, say, at least 2 dummy links. You will be in a good spot. Whereas the Nemium is much more important as it's link based, so you want to have that maxed out. Now, skill level is not as important as having your units enhanced, so please prioritize having them level 90 and 5-star over SLing all of them. Now, instead of a Nemium, you could also use a Jaeger for DPS, or if your Manticores aren't as raised or aren't so tanky in terms of stats, you can also use a Swap Ripper or an Aegis. Now, if you happen to not have 2 Manticores in which you can use, but only 1, then my suggestion for that would be to use a Nemium, and Jaeger for your DPS, and then an Aegis to have something else to tank as well. Now, the other 3 teams that you'll be using, well, you have this team is the main one, but the second team is a team for Destroyer, as the boss that spawns on this map is Destroyer, so you want to have a nighttime AR bossing team in order to kill her. So something like this or similar is very good for that, as long as you're able to properly kite the explosions. Not too big a deal. Now, the 2 other teams, this does depend on your strategy, but there are 2 sets of 2 ghosts, which ghost enemies, which you will have to kill for points. So the first one can be killed, or the first set can be killed with a rifle handgun team. The requirements aren't very high, as the enemies are quite easy to kill, so don't worry too much. But depending on your strategy, the second set might need to be killed under parachute debuff. So you could have something like M4 Exodia with SMG tank, or you could have a nighttime debuff AR team or rifle handgun team. There is a lot of variability, as the fights aren't particularly difficult. So overall, map 1 is the easiest of the 3 maps. Just find a strategy that suits you and copy paste it, then move on to the next map. So moving on to map 2, it is a 4-turn condensed supply line defense map where SF is banned and you can only have 5 echelons. But don't let the size of this small map fool you. It is by far the most difficult, as it has the most RNG as well. It is similar to polarized light ranking in that you do need to use parachute ferries to declog enemy heliports so that you can get more enemy spawns. So that means more kills and more points. So map 3 has 3 difficulties, and the main objective here is to set up your supply line and then hold it while declogging the heliports and getting all the kills that you can. So there's 2 main ways to do this map. The recommended way is to use 5 combat echelons, although if you are struggling and aren't really able to do that, you can use 4 combat echelons and 2B14, a Hawk, though you are much more limited in the amount of points you can get, as you won't be able to get as many kills. So the teams are generally split up between camping teams and sweeping teams. Camping teams are generally teams that kind of stay still don't really move around much, and just kind of camp essentially in one spot and catch kills. Whereas your sweeping teams are those with parachute fairies that go around and declog the enemy heliports and catch kills. So most or generally recommended camping teams would be this team for sure, a cord boat team with beach ferry, as that's one of the easiest things to do. It's a really just real solid camping team. And a variation of this team though is the armor stack camping team, which you use a flashbang ammo, which is one of the new equipments, on your M870. Specifically use M870 because her skill can basically tank through the swap Jaegers, which can do quite a lot of damage to shotguns. So this is a pretty high requirement team though, because you do need a 5-star armor fairy with an armor skill, and it needs to be SL10 in order to get the extra armor. As well as your MGs that you use need to all have armor buffing tiles to get your M870 up to around 100 or so armor. Now, other camping teams that you can use are much more simpler teams that use taunt fairy, such as just rifle handgun camping teams use taunt or twin. Whereas the sweeping teams, on the other hand, are where the more struggles, or where you will struggle for on this map. The best sweeping team that I can recommend would be this team: a Hanyang mod, Grape, Stetchkin mod, P22, and MP5 mod, with, of course, a 5-star parachute fairy. Now, this team would probably be the best one that you can use, specifically with a Stetchkin buttstock. And for the equips, if you do have sniper ammo, you would prefer to use those over the standard AP ammo if you can. And you would like to use flares, if you are able to as well, to give a nice little accuracy buff to your team if you can as well. But aside from that, there are various other variations you can use, such as replacing Stetchkin with 5.7 or Grizzly, or P22 with Webley, or MP5 with any of the other force shielders. In that case, you could get a team such as this, such as Thompson and Calico, where you just kind of reverse the spots. And there are various other sweeper teams that you can use. You will have to check the document for that. But these two are probably the ones I would recommend most. Now, in terms of the map itself, there is a lot of RNG in terms of the spawns that you get and the movement of the enemies. As you will have to, in your strategies, you can't really copy-paste anything because enemy movement is random, so you have to adapt each turn essentially. And the big thing for this map in the later turns, specifically turn 3, 4, and 5 spawns, is that the Nemium spawns are the 170k CE. They give the most points, so you want to try to get as many of those as possible. But otherwise, please have patience when attempting this map, as you may need to reset many times depending on enemy movement. Specifically, turn 2 enemy movement is where you may need to reset. And on the last turn, at the very bottom heliport here, Dreamer does spawn, so you need to have a team capable of catching and killing her. So I would recommend using either an M4 team in some way, or if you are going to use a team like this, or a sweeping team, I would recommend making sure you have Hanyang for sure, and you may need to have someone other than Grape, as having a caped rifle will not be able to kite Dreamer, and it would be a bad time. So map 2 is by far the most difficult map, and the map that you will be spending the most time on. So have fun and do your best. Now lastly, map 3 is a 4-turn day ranking map that has 2 levels. The top layer has a bunch of refugee NPCs that on turn 3 do turn into enemies that you can kill for points, whereas the bottom is a death zone that has a whole bunch of SF spawns, and the center has a bunch of Ouroboros that will go away, or that will change and go away and give you points later into the ranking run, the more kills you get. So the objective is to cap as many nodes as you can while catching all the kills. So you want to try to get the maximum of 39 kills without repairing if you can avoid it. But otherwise, it is a pretty straightforward map. You just follow the strategy, and the difficulty comes in making sure that you can actually get all the kills, as there are some smaller death stacks of initial spawns on the second layer. And for that, you will need a team such as this. Or you can also use a cord boat as well, with Jill or Contender, or Grizzly as well. And those are the recommended teams to use to fight the death stacks that are initial spawned on layer 2. But aside from that, layer 2 is mostly just rifle handgun teams and making sure that you can kill all those units there. And layer 1 is using, there is, depending on the strategy you use, there is one team that has, let me get it right now. It is, you will need essentially you need AoE and shielding to tank, so something like SAT-8 with P22 shield, then you need AoE damage, so such as HK416, and cord, as well as something like Uzi mod, set up like this, and you'll have enough AoE and shielding in order to fight the groups of refugees under debuff. And then in addition to that, also this does depend on your strategy, you will have 2 other teams that will mop up the rest of the refugees and make sure you can cap all those nodes on the top layer. Those teams can just be regular AR SMG teams, just recommended to have some naders in there. Or you can also throw in a shotgun if you need to as well. But aside from that, map 3 is pretty much straightforward, and it's just capping and killing. And it's another cookie cutter map like map 1. And it's just that some of the fights on the second level can be quite difficult, so you may need to reset a bit on those. Now, if you have any questions or concerns, please leave a comment down below, or come by my stream when I'm live and attempting my ranking runs, or join my Discord and ask me there. Links are in the description. And watch out for uploads of my ranking runs in the future if you need a reference or just want to see how it's done. And remember to love your Raifu. Peace.